Welcome back to the shop, guys. Today I want to take a few steps back and take a look at a mod that's geared towards those that have a relatively stock C5 and want to improve its performance without spending a ton of money. This mod makes it a little bit easier for your C5 to breathe and gives it cooler, more oxygen-dense air at the same time. The mod is known as the infamous Air Filter Assembly Flip and Zip Tie mod. This mod essentially takes the stock air filter assembly, removes the baffled cover, flips the assembly 180 degrees, opens a port in the radiator shroud, and then remounts the assembly so that it now has direct access to the cooler, denser air from outside the C5's engine bay. Now this is a pretty popular mod, and it has been for over a decade or more, and for good reasons. First, it's ultra budget friendly, only costing a few bucks for a few of these large zip ties that you can get at pretty much any home improvement store, and it'll only take a little bit of your time, maybe an hour or two at most. Second, it improves your C5's ability to breathe by reducing some of the restriction to flow within your C5's air intake system. And third, it brings down the average overall air temperature, bringing in more cool air, which is exactly what your engine craves. So we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of this mod, and we'll do that next.
Toys for life.
Let's start with a very brief and general overview of exactly how the C5 ingests its air. We'll start with the throttle body, which when you move your foot on the pedal, the throttle body contains the valve which controls exactly how much air enters the engine. Interesting fun fact about the C5 Corvette's throttle body: when you push on the foot pedal, there is no cable that runs from the foot pedal to the throttle body controlling its movement. Instead, that foot pedal assembly sends a signal to the car's computer. The computer digests the information and makes the final decision, and then sends a signal to the throttle body controlling how far open that throttle blade is. Anyhow, from the throttle body moving forward, the next thing we have is the bellows, which is really just a flexible coupler joining the throttle body to the next component, which is the air bridge. And that's kind of a funny name, I've always thought, and I think they call it the air bridge because it's just a bridge over the radiator connecting the throttle body to the air bridge to the next component, which is the mass airflow sensor. The mass airflow sensor's job is to accurately measure the amount of air coming into the engine and then relay that information to the car's computer, which performs some calculations and then sends a signal to the fuel injectors telling them how much fuel to deliver. And finally, right in front of the C5's mass airflow sensor is the stock C5 air cleaner assembly, and I just happen to have a completely stock air cleaner assembly here for us to take a close look at. Just giving this a quick once-over, it's easy to see that it might be somewhat restrictive to optimal airflow. There are several smaller pathways around the perimeter of the assembly that air has to take to get into the housing and to the filter and ultimately to the engine. Overall, it looks rather odd and restrictive, and that's in my opinion and that of many others through the years. The C5 Corvette air filter assembly had to be designed this way because GM engineers have to cater to a very small subset of the entire group of C5 Corvette owners to ensure that regardless of where a particular owner lives in the United States and what their driving habits are, the air filter assembly will still meet these four main criteria. First, there's a very small percentage of the overall group of C5 Corvette owners that live in the desert southwest of the United States, where there's tons of dust and sand that absolutely loves to clog air filter assemblies. So GM engineers had to make certain design considerations into this assembly to ensure that even these desert dwellers can have a pretty long filter change interval without the filter getting clogged. Second, an even smaller percentage of C5 owners might try to cross a stream at some time during their ownership. Don't laugh, you've seen it on YouTube. When certain owners get caught in a flash flood, they panic, they continue driving. Before you know it, the water is up about halfway up the side of the door, and they continue on. Due to these folks, GM engineers had to design the filter assembly and its location to ensure that it's high and dry and warmer than it needed to be in all but the craziest of situations. If they hadn't, there would be a very small percentage of people that would be complaining to GM after they hydrolock their engine from taking in too much water during one of those C5 river expeditions. Third, believe it or not, some C5 Corvette owners can be kind of picky. Some of them don't even want to hear any exhaust noises coming from their C5, and some of them would be convinced that something's terribly wrong if they were to hear some suction noises coming from their air filter assembly. So for these folks, GM engineers are forced to make even more design considerations, including baffles and whatnot into the air filter assembly, so that these people don't hear any suction noises. Finally, and most likely, the fourth design consideration was that GM engineers had to make sure that the air filter assembly flowed a reasonable amount of air so that the mighty LS engine performed pretty well most of the time. So think about your driving habits and where you live in the United States for just a moment. If you're not driving through massive puddles that often and you don't live in the desert Southwest, then odds are the air intake flip and zip modification will give you extra horsepower without ever having a negative consequence. Now, I would love to demonstrate this mod by actually performing it, but it's not compatible with my supercharged setup. I would point out, however, that my air filter does in fact draw air in from the same area as the flip and zip tie mod does, and I've had zero issues with water or dirt intrusion over the past several years. Now, fortunately, I came across an absolutely fantastic set of instructions on the Corvette forum. They were placed there by a guy with the forum name DNDRSN back in 2004. His instructions are so well done. I'm going to just go through them page by page here. This way you can either do a print screen for each page and print your own manual, or if you want, you can just use your mobile device while you are scrolling through these pages, performing the mod. Well guys, that was a bit different than the typical format that we do on this channel, but I think we've succeeded with arming you with the information you need about the flip and zip tie mod to understand how it works and whether or not it's right for your C5. I want to give a huge shout out to DNDRSN from the Corvette forum for uploading such quality information so that people down the road like us can find it and put it to good use. If you decide to tackle this project, please be sure to leave a comment down below and share your installation experience with the rest of us. Guys, if you liked the video, hit that thumbs up, consider subscribing, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.